Welcome back, everybody. We had a 1 month time off. We had the UCC event and also the holidays. So we took a break and finally we are resuming our sessions of Bhagavad Gita. So this time try to follow a little bit of different standard or a different approach based upon the lessons learned and feedbacks. So we'll have classes every week as much as possible. The cancellations will be very minimal now onwards. And also we'll try to cover 3 to 4 verses so that we can complete this in a time-bound manner. And also we'll have question answer sessions. And I won't project slide here, but what I will do is I request all of you to print out the verses and keep in front of you, either in a soft copy form or a hard copy form. That is one request. And the second request is I'm going to publish the notes in a day or two. I'm getting a few volunteers' help. So the key concepts, I will just write the notes so that you can read and study. And you can post any questions either in the WhatsApp group or at the end of the session, we will have a few minutes for question answers. The whole idea is this is not a lecture and go. Let's try to understand, learn Gita, live Gita, and try to master Gita. Mastering Gita is always mastering the life, so that we can take the message of the Gita into our life and try to get evolved in that process. So that is the new approach. So with that, let's get into the 8th chapter. So even though we covered 14 to 15 verses, it was a difficult chapter. So many questions were there. So I thought, let's start from the beginning. We will cover the first 16 verses quickly, and then we will go to the next verses. But make sure that this chapter is very, very clear. Any questions or any comments? So this chapter is, as you know, this chapter is known as Akshara Brahma Yoga or Taraka Brahma Yoga. That is the name given to this chapter. And this chapter comes in the second Shatka of the Bhagavad Gita. As you know, the Bhagavad Gita is divided into 3 major groups. One group is the first part, which is the chapters 1 to 6. It is known as means it is mainly talking about myself, the Atma, individual self. And the second portion of the Gita, which is from chapter 7 to 12, is talking about the Ishvara, the reality. The whole idea of the Gita can be derived from the Mahavakya Tattvamasi, right? Thou art that. So the first 6 chapter is talking about you. The second 6 chapter is talking about that, which is the absolute reality. And the third 6 chapter, which is from chapter 13 to 18, is going to talk about the connection. Predominant topic. Of course, each of these chapters covers much more than that, but this is the predominant topic. So this chapter is the second chapter of that second Shatka. Shatka means a group of 6 chapters. The first 6 chapter is the first Shatka. The second 6 chapter is the second Shatka. And the third 6 chapter is the third Shatka. So the second 6, this comes in that second Shatka. Chapter 7. In chapter 7, we had a detailed understanding of the nature of the Ishvara. If you remember, we talked about the 2 types of reality. One is transcendental, the other one is immanent. So the difference between these 2 we understood that the God is never far away from us. The God is always closer to us. It's not that we are not seeing him, but we fail to see him. So Krishna gave us a lot of pointers how you can look around you and see the God in front of you. So that is very clear. We saw that all the elements are coming from me, and wherever you see a glory, right? Where means the fire in the sun and the moon, right? The wetness in the water, all that is coming from me. So you cannot miss Ishvara. And we talked about the different types of devotees, and the 4 types of devotees we saw, how each one of them approaches Ishvara, and why we fail to see Ishvara. It is because of the Maya. All those points we have seen. So with that background, we are getting into the 8th chapter, which is known as Akshara Brahma Yoga or Taraka Brahma Yoga. The central theme of this chapter is Upasana. Upasana is a technical term. So what is the literal meaning of Upasana? Upa means close. Asana means sit. So how do I sit closer to that Ishvara or that reality or that Bhagavan? So any practices that helps me to sit closer to that Bhagavan is known as Upasana. So if you remember the entire approach of the Bhagavad Gita, the ultimate goal of the Bhagavad Gita is to realize my own true nature, because per the vision of the Gita, we have seen this multiple times, so I'm just recapping it. Per the vision of the Gita, all my suffering is due to my lack of my proper self-identity. If you have any doubt, just remember that Swapna Drishtanda. So if I think that I'm a dream body, a dream mind, I will have to face all the sufferings I encounter in a dream. But the moment I realize that my true identity is not the dream, my true identity survives the dream. Even though I exist in the dream, I do have an existence outside of my dream. And whatever happens to me in the dream will not carry forward. So when I understand that realization, what is going to happen is it puts an end to all my suffering. It gives me enough courage and diligence to face my problems in the world I live. So Gita tells that by realizing your true identity, you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are not the senses, you are not the prana, but the consciousness behind all these things. The consciousness by which you are aware of your thoughts, the consciousness by which you are aware of your feelings, the consciousness by which you are aware of your emotions. And that is what your true nature. And that consciousness is your true nature. By knowing that, all your sufferings will come to an end. It's very easy to say. It's very easy to say that the source of happiness is within yourself. But it is very hard to put that into my experience so that everything I do will have a flavor of that. It's like in a dream, somebody comes and tell you that your true nature is not this. Your true nature is somebody who is sitting on a bed or lying down on a bed. It's easy to understand, but that won't get into your experience unless that dream becomes a lucid dream. So just like that, means realizing this truth is not very easy. It is very hard. Why? This knowledge is very simple. This knowledge is never far away from me. I don't have to achieve anything. For example, I'm sitting here in North Brunswick and I want to go to North Brunswick. I don't need to put any effort because I'm already there. But if I think that I'm sitting in California, I think that I need to go make a 6-hour flight. So the problem is not means that you need to achieve something, but realize that you are already what you want to be. But this is not very easy. The Bhagavad Gita tells us that we have two major obstacles in understanding our own true self. The first one is known as mala, or impurities of the mind. The first obstacle for us to understand our true nature is the impurities of the mind. So the Gita prescribes a practice to remove all these mental impurities. And that is what is known as Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga is a practice aimed for purifying my mind. The purification of the mind is the goal of the Karma Yoga. So the Karma Yoga will purify my mind, and followed by Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga. Upasana Yoga is prescribed for the stability of the mind. So purity of the mind, stability of the mind are the two preconditions for me to understand myself. So this chapter is mainly focused on the Upasana Yoga, And that Upasana Yoga is for the stabilization of the mind. And this Upasana Yoga is an Upasana of the Ishvara. So that is what the focus of this chapter. So this chapter is known as Taraka Brahma Yoga or Akshara Brahma Yoga. There are a few topics covered in this chapter because this chapter, the verses 1 to 4, covers the definition of some key terms. Brahma, Atma, Adhyatma, Adhideva means Adhideva, Adhibhuta, Adhiyajna. So these are, and also karma. So karma, Brahma, Adhyatma, Karma, Adhibhuta, Adhideva, Adhiyajna. These are the 6 technical terms that is clarified at the beginning of the chapter. And also there was a question by Arjuna, right? What happens to a person? Let's say that if there is a yogi is there, at the time of the death, can he keep the mental stability? Because when somebody reaches the end of his life, what is going to happen? His mind, even if it is pure, it is very hard to keep the stability of the mind. So how a person can keep the stability of the mind? And if I keep the stability of the mind and hold on to Ishvara at the time of the death, what is the benefit? So this is another question that is being asked. So that is why verses 5 to 14 is going to talk about how somebody can keep the stability, the mental stability at the time of their departure, at the time of their final departure. And if somebody keeps the mental stability at the time of their departure, what is the benefit? So that is the second topic covered in this chapter. So the first topic is the definition of some key terms. There are 6 terms we talked: Brahma, Adhyatma, Karma, Adhideva, Adhibhuta, Adhiyajna. 6 technical terms, because these technical terms were used in the 7th chapter, and Arjuna didn't want to lose them because Sanskrit is a context sensitive language. So depending upon the context, the meaning can vary. So he just wanted to make sure that we, along with him, understanding the correct meaning of these terminologies. And then actually there are 2 types of goals everybody has in their life. One is a material goal. I wanted to be wealthy. I wanted to be highly successful in my day-to-day mundane activities. That is one goal. The people who does karmas for the sake of some benefits here, some rewards here. So what means that is one type of goal. And another type of people who do karma for what? For the purification of their mind and moksha. So there is a discussion between these 2 goals of life. So that is verse 15 to 22. And then there are 2 paths described in this chapter, actually Krishna Gati and Shukla Gati, the Gati of the soul. We already talked about what is a soul. The soul is that entity which transmigrates when somebody dies. It is different from Atma. You all know that. So there are what is the Gati or the path of the soul at the time of the death? One is Krishna Gati, the other one is Shukla Gati. And finally, the chapter closes by praising the glory of the Upasana. So these are the 5 topics covered in this chapter. So let me recap the introduction of this chapter. This chapter is known as Akshara Brahma or Taraka Brahma. Why that name is given is Upasana is the key topic of this chapter. Upasana of Brahman using Om, because Taraka is Om, Akshara is also, refer means we can use Om is a representation of Akshara. By tradition, Taraka Mantra is the name of Rama is also known as Taraka Mantra. Rama is known as Taraka Nama. Just like that, Om is also known as Taraka. And that is why this chapter is named as Akshara Brahma or Taraka Brahma. And this comes in the second portion of the Gita, where the focus is the Ishvara or the reality or the God of the universe or the cosmos. And third thing is the Upasana. What is the role of Upasana in our spiritual practice? Upasana will not give you the moksha directly or the knowledge directly, But upasana will prepare you for moksha. Without upasana, one cannot gain moksha, because it's said pre-direct, actually requisite for gaining the knowledge. So the entire spiritual path is mala nivritti, meaning cleansing of the mind by karma yoga, and stabilizing the mind using upasana yoga. And once the mind is pure and controlled, right, it is free from all the impurities and it is free from all the turbulence. Chitta Shuddhi and Chitta Sthiti, once it is achieved, the knowledge will work. I always request you to remember that example of that lake. If the lake is dirty, you will not be able to see the bottom of the lake. And if the lake is turbulent, you will not be able to see the bottom of the lake. So once the lake is pure and steady, you will be able to see the bottom of the lake. So that is when the knowledge will work. And this chapter has 5 major topics. The first topic is the definition of 6 technical terms used in the previous chapter, namely Brahma, Adhyatma, Karma, Adhideva, Adibhuta, Adhiyajna. 6 key terms. And then from verse 5 to 14, an elaborate discussion, right? What is the benefit of keeping the mind stable at the time of death? And what is the benefit of keeping the mind hooked to the Ishvara or the God at the time of the death? So that is the topic from verse 5 to 14. And there are 2 types of mukti, and that is being elaborately discussed in this chapter. First type of mukti is known as Krama Mukti, and the other one is known as Jivan Mukti. We already talked about this, but we will see this in detail. And then the next topic is there are 2 types of paths are described. One is people focusing on the world, and the other people focusing on Ishvara. So what is the difference between these 2 goals? And finally, there are 2 paths described. One is called Krishna Gati, the other one is Shukla Gati. And finally, the glory of the Upasana is discussed. So this is the summary of this chapter. Any questions? No questions? So we can go. So Anu, would you mind, chanting these 4 verses, first 4 verses?
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha Atha Ashtamodhyayah Akshara Parabrahma Yogaha Arjuna Uvacha Kim Tat Brahma Kimadhyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Adhibhutam cha kim proktam Adhidaivam kimuchyate Adhiyajnah katham kotra Dehesmin madhusudana Prayanakale cha katham Nyeyosi niyatatmabhihi Shri Bhagavanuvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavothyaatmamuchyate Bhutabhavodbhavakarah Visargah Karma Sanyitah Adhibhutam Ksharo Bhavaha Purushashchadhidaivatam Adhiyajnyohamevatra Dehe Deha Bhritambara.
Thank you. Brilliant. Beautiful. So it is my request that you all should take a printout or keep a soft copy of this chanting, so that whenever we chant, it makes sense. And whenever I go through, I'll try to break the words also, so that it will be clear to you. So Anu, could you chant the verse one more time, if you don't mind?
Sure. Arjuna Uvacha Kim Tat Brahma Kimadhyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Adhibhutam cha kim proktam Adhidaivam kimuchyate.
So the chapter starts with a question from Arjuna. So understand the context. We completed the 7th chapter. In the 7th chapter, Krishna was using all these technical terms. So Arjuna got slightly confused. So what exactly is the context of this verse? And what exactly is the intended meaning of these verses or intended meaning of these words used here? So that's why he asked the question. So what is the question? The question is, Kim tat brahma kimarthyatmam, kim karma purushottama, adibhudam, athibhudam cha kim proktam, atidevam kimuchyate. So let's try to detach and break up and try to understand the verses very clearly, right? So kim tat brahma, kim, what? Tad Brahma, that Brahman. What exactly is that Brahman you are talking about? So the first question is, what is Brahman? And then Kimathyatmam. What is Ati Atmam? Ati means that is the Athishtana, right? That which holds together. What is that holding an individual? What is Atma? So what is Brahman? What is Atma? So this was the first two questions. So what is that Brahman? And what is that centered in the self or an individual, right? So an individual, when you look at that, he is alive, he functions. And what is that entity around which he is centered? So that is one is known as Athyatmam. Athi Atma. Athi means that which is centered. Atma means individual. So the word Atma is a complicated meaning, but here typically asking what is Jiva, right? So the first one is what is Brahman and what is Jiva? And the next question is what? Kim tad Brahma kimathyatmam. Kim karma purushottama. O Purushottama, the best among all the Purushas. The word Purusha has multiple meaning. Simple literal meaning is man or the human. But here the meaning is little bit bigger because Krishna is not being addressed as best among the human being. Not at all. Here the Purusha, you have to borrow that terminology from the Sankhya philosophy. So the Sankhya philosophy talks about Purusha as that which is beyond everything, right? So that is the ultimate reality of the universe. So, the most ultimate one, what is Brahman? What is Atiyatma? What is karma? What is the karma we are talking about? Because the word karma also is very complicated. So what exactly is the meaning of the karma you are talking here? So then he tells, Atipudam kim proptam, Atidevam kim uchyate. What is Atipudam? What is the Adibhuda and what is Atideva? Atideva means Bhuda means element. What are the elements of the universe? And Atideva means that intelligent principles that controls various phenomenal forces of the universe. For example, the lightning, right? The wind, the fire. All these phenomenal forces are supposed to be the divine expression. Who controls that? Who is the Lord of all that? And Ati Yajnam. Ati means, so Ati Devam. So this is the first verse. So the literal meaning is O Purushottama, or the ultimate Lord or the supreme Lord. What is Brahman? What is Atma, or what is that hold the individual together? What is karma? What is the Athipuda? And what is the Athiyajna? Sorry, Atideva. So four terms were introduced here in the first verse. Once again, the question was asked, what is Brahman? What is Atma? What is karma? What is Adibhuda? What is Athideva? 5 questions was asked. This is the first verse. So let's continue. Anu, could you please stand?
Second verse or
Second
fifth
verse.
verse?
Second verse.
अधियज्ञः कथं कोत्र देहेऽस्मिन् मधुसूदन प्रयाणकाले च कथं ज्ञेयोऽसि नियतात्मभिः.
Okay. So two more questions were asked. So the first verse has 4 questions and the second verse has 2 more questions. The second verse is Athiyajna Katham Proktam Dehi. In the human body, who is the Athishtana? Who is the center of all the offering? All the Yajna. Yajna is a technical term, right? Yajna is a technical term used in our Vedanta. So who is centered means who is holding on to all these yajna. So whatever you do, who is the offerer and who receives that offering in your body? So the whole yajna system, who controls that? So that is the next question. And then he asks one more question, right? So athiyajnam katham means that is in your human body, who is the athishtana of the yajna? So if you remember the fourth chapter, Krishna converted all the actions into yajna, right? The eating, the speaking, the bathing, everything you do can be converted as an yajna. So whatever you do with your human body can be converted as an yajna, and there is somebody who is receiving all these yajna. Who is receiving all these yajna? So that is the question. And then the final question, which can be considered as a deviation from this topic. So he was asking, prayana kale cha katham. So what happens at the time of the death, right? How you can be known, right? Niyatatma bhibihi. How somebody can keep their mind in a stable state and know you. Because all these yogas are wonderful when you are alive. But at the time of death, what is going to happen is you may not be able to focus, you may not be able to concentrate. And how is it possible that somebody can hold on to you at the time of your death? These are the 6 questions asked by Arjuna. So can somebody elaborate or just enumerate those 6 questions? Once again, the 8th chapter opens up with 6 questions from Arjuna. What are they?
What is Brahman? What is Atma?
Right. What is Brahman? What is Atma? That is correct. 4 more.
Then what is action? What is the world? And what are the gods?
Slight difference. Okay, so that's why I just asked this question. So what is Brahman? Correct. That is the first question. Second question, what is Atma? So that is correct. The third question is, what is action? Arnabji, you said it is karma. And what is the fourth question?
What is Aditeva?
Adi Bhudam. Adi Devam. Adi Bhudam. Bhudam means what? In your local vernacular, Bhudam means what?
Elements.
Elements, exactly. In local vernacular, Bhudam means ghost in some of the, I don't know, in...
Ghost, yeah.
Yeah. But here Bhudam means elements. Per the popular model of the Vedanta, how many elements are there?
5.
5. So the entire solid state is consolidated into one element. The entire liquid state is consolidated into another element. And the entire gaseous state is consolidated into another element. The whole fire or the high temperature where the particles are loosely apart, that is consolidated into another state. And finally, the lack of any of this is classified as another state. So just understand that this is a model, and model is always an abstract representation of the reality. That doesn't mean that other models cannot be used to describe a fact. So this model is used to describe the universe. So what exactly is the adhishtana of all these bhuta, adibhuta? Because if you see a mountain, that mountain is a combination of all these things. If you see your body, that is also a combination of all these elements. And if you see your mind, that mind is a combination of your subtle bodies, right? Subtle body is nothing but subtle element. So everything you can objectify in this universe, whether it is a sun or a moon, whether it is a plant, animal, their body comes out of the element. What exactly is that element? And Ati Deva, right? You see some powerful expression of the divine in the universe. Lightning, the sunlight, the sun, right? And also the gravity. You see the wind. All these are beyond our control. You could see that as an expression of Ishvara. And what is known as, that is what is known as Deva. Deva means illumined, shining. So that you see some expression of divinity in the entire universe. And what exactly is holding that? That is what is Ati Deva. And finally, Ati Yajna. Yajna means an act, anything that you offer. That is what it is. Like, so typically the definition of yajna is what? You will have, means ritual yajna is where you will have a fire and you put your offerings into that fire, hoping that that offering will go to a deity. Correct?
Yes.
Whenever you do the yajna, symbolically, what does that mean? You're putting ghee or you're putting something into the fire. Are you offering that to fire? Or are you just burning it? Or what is your expectation? I am offering this to the, I mean, sometimes you do that for a material benefit. For example, somebody can do a putra kameshti yajna. What is the intended result?
Get
You want
babies.
a son or a daughter. And you are praying to somebody, right? Sometimes it is Indra, sometimes it is Shiva, sometimes it is Vishnu. So what happens? This is a symbolic representation. Your belief is that whatever you offer into that fire is going to the intended deity, right? So if you look at Rigveda, the first mantra is Om Agni Mile Purohitam. That means Agni is only like a postman. You're giving a packet to a postman or a UPS. What happens? The UPS will deliver that to the intended place. So you're offering that to Agni with a prayer that, oh Agni, take this offering to my intended destination. That is the meaning of the yajna. So this yajna is the symbolic, ritualistic yajna. So if you remember, right, all these rituals are nothing but it is a symbolic representation of the worldly action. So in world, you take a lot of actions, right? You do your job, you pass out your exam, you clear an interview, you work hard. All these things means each one of them you are intending a particular result. So this actions also can be considered as an yajna. For example, I can offer all the work I'm doing at my work to the Lord. So that can be the same action can be converted into yajna. So the question here is, whenever you do an yajna, whether it is a material yajna or a ritualistic yajna, it doesn't matter. If you do that as an yajna, to whom it is going. So that is the Ati yajna. What that means in your body, what is the Ati yajna? So these are the 5 questions. And the 6th and the final question is, what was that question? At the time of death, how one can keep the mind stable? Point number 1. Point number 2 is how the mind can be kept stable. That is point number 1. Point number 2 is what? How I can hold on to you at the time of the death. Is that possible? Because it's easy to keep the mind stable, because the very purpose of the upasana is to gain the stability of the mind. So can I get the stability of the mind at the time of death? Is that possible? So These are the 6 questions.
Rajaji, is there any particular benefit of keeping the mind stable at the time of death?
Yes, that is what is discussed in verse 5 to 14. So, Arnabji, that's a good question. So, Krishna, what he does means, how many questions were asked to Krishna?
6.
7, right? No,
Yes.
7 questions. So, Brahma,
Atma.
Karma, Adhideva, Adhibhuda, Adhiyajna, and how one gains stability at the time of death. How do you remember? How somebody can remember you at the time of death? 7 questions were asked, and Krishna answers the first 6 questions in 2 verses. So, verse 3 and 4, he answers the first 6 questions. And the entire rest of the chapter is focused, it's a diversion. Really speaking, the Gita was going in a direction about Ishvara, the reality, etc. What happens at the time of death? What is the journey of the soul? That was never a topic in the Gita. But this particular point of time, this was asked. The entire chapter is dedicated for this. Specifically, verses 5 to 14, he answers that in detail. Okay? Great. Any other questions? Okay. So, Anu, can you chant verse 3?
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavotthyatmamuchyate Bhuta Bhavotbhavakaraha Visargah Karma Sannitaha.
Beautiful, right? So he is giving answers to 3 questions. So he tells Aksharam Brahma Paramam. Aksharam. He defines Brahma as Aksharam and then adds a qualifier to that. Paramam Aksharam. The word Akshara comes from 2 words, A plus Kshara. What is Kshara?
Perishable.
Perishable. Akshara?
Imperishable.
Imperishable. It's a big word. Can you pause for a moment and tell me whether you know something imperishable? Anything in the universe you can imagine.
Time.
Time, there is a beginning for the time, isn't it?
Mhm.
Classical physics, your view is correct per classical physics. But we went much beyond classical physics. Correct?
Earth.
Earth, do you think that the earth will be there forever? First of all, the earth state is changing. Right? What was earth million years before is not the earth right now. Sun, it is changing. It probably its duration might be billion years or million years, but all of them are subjected to an end. And this is acceptable to science also. Everything in this universe is subjected to change. And that's what prompted a scientist to say, change is the only changeless thing. So, anything you can imagine, whether it is Pacific Ocean, or whether it is the sun, or stars. Have you observed, read these astronomy books? Sometimes the star you see, when you gaze at the sky, the star you see now might have already destroyed.
Yes.
So why are you seeing that now?
Because the star is many light years away.
Correct. So the star you are seeing now, is it the star that exists now?
Many years ago.
Many years back. Correct. So everything in the universe is subjected to death or change. So now imagine an entity. Imagine something which is not subjected to change at all, right? So differentiation with respect to time is zero. Nothing will happen. It was there in the past. It is going to be there in the future. We can talk about only one thing. We can fit only one thing into this definition. And that is what is known as absolute reality. Reality in its absolute sense. Everything else is reality in a relative sense. When you say that earth is there forever, absolutely, the earth is there throughout my lifetime, probably throughout a few generations of my lifetime. But it is not going to be there forever. That is the problem. So how to conceive that truth, that God, that is what we call as God, that is what we call as Ishvara, and that is what we call as Bhagavan, absolute reality. So that reality is not subjected to change. That reality is not subjected to decay. At the end of one cycle of the universe will go to an unmanifested state, but this reality will continue. We have seen this in the 7th chapter also. So that absolute reality, and there is only one reality. Everything else is derived from that. And that is what is known as Brahman. So the literal meaning of the Brahman is Brihi Vruthate. It is the largest. It is all pervading, and it is the largest entity in the universe. There is nothing bigger than that. So the supreme Akshara is known as Brahman. Aksharam Brahma Paramam. So that is the first definition. Clear? Is that clear? At least intellectually? I know that it is very hard to conceive, but at least you got the gist of it, right?
Yes.
Now the second entity is what? Ati Atma. So when you see an individual, what exactly is holding that individual? So Krishna clearly tells that Sobhava Adhyatmam Uchyate. The nature of that Brahman is manifested in an individual. It is known as Atma. So you have to consider this one as the micro level, the other one is at the macro level. In a micro level, right, an individual is there. The individual has body, individual has mind, individual has prana, individual has intellect, individual has physical body, individual has subtle body, individual has causal body. All these are subjected to change and death. But there is one entity in that individual which remains constant throughout the life and beyond. And that is what is known as Atma. So the Brahman manifested in an individual is known as Atma. So essentially, Brahman and Atman are the same. Clear? Because this is what we have been seeing earlier. So that which provides life to an individual, that which is the consciousness in an individual, that is known as Atman. This is the second definition. So, any questions? So we talked about Brahman and Atman. What was the third question?
Karma.
Karma.
What is karma, right? So karma is very interesting. Like Krishna tells, any offering is karma. So that is what is Krishna is defined. It is defined as visarga. That is the definition used in this verse. So karma is defined as visarga, the offering, right? Visarga means an offering. So now, anything you do, let's try to understand the scope of this word karma. So the literal meaning of the karma is anything you do with a karana is karma. What is karana? Karana is an instrument. The instrument associated with your body. So how many instruments are there in the body on a high level? Anybody can tell?
The 5 sense organs?
Correct. The 5 organs of action and the 5 organs of perception. So anything you do, and also there is an inner organ, antakarana, which is known as mind. Mind is also known as karana. Intellect and the mind is also karana. So 12, your 5 organs of perception, your 5 organs of action, and your mind and intellect. Anything you do with any of this is known as karma. So what is the scope of karma now? 18, seeing, touching, thinking, feeling, all that comes under the scope of karma. And that is why it is known as visarga. And these are all offering from my body. So this is karma. And Krishna tells, what is the nature of this karma here? It causes the manifestation of all beings. He goes back to the karma theory. So we need 2 minutes explanation here. What is the cause of why I am born in this particular body? If you remember the karma theory, remember we took some time and understood the whole karma theory last year. Why an individual get birth? If you remember, any
Prarabdha karma.
exactly the prarabdha karma. So any karma I do, whether it is with the body, the mind, or the intellect, what happens? There is a drishta phala and there is an adrishta phala. What is the drishta phala? The immediate benefit I am getting. And what is the adrishta phala? It is an impression, or it is a karma in a pool of karma. So whatever I accumulate in my life is known as agami karma. And at the time of death, what is going to happen? This agami karma will go to a pool of karma known as sanchita karma. And from that pool of sanchita karma, a subset of karma is created, means used to take the next birth. And that subset of karma is known as, Arnabji, you already said that.
Prarabdha.
If anybody is not clear about this karma, please refer to our last year's talk. Karma. We had a long discussion, 3 sessions on the law of karma. So karmas are multiple types. One is sanchita karma, agami karma, and prarabdha karma. It is due to the prarabdha karma I get a particular body and I am born at a particular place. So it is because of these actions I do, I get a particular birth, because all the actions I do goes to the pool of the sanchita karma, and eventually I get birth. This is what the next point. So we answered what is Brahma, what is Jiva, and what is karma. And there are 2 other things. One is Adibhuta and Athi Yajna. Sorry, Athi Deva. So Adi Bhuta, the beings that are subjected to change. So that is what the definition of Bhuta. So the Bhuta's definition is nothing but just the opposite of Akshara. So Brahman is that which is not subjected to change. Adibhuta means that elements which are subjected to change. right? That is the very nature of the element. So these elements are subjected to change, but they are the building blocks of the universe. And these elements comes from the supreme Akshara. But what happens? They changes in time and they get destroyed. When they get destroyed, they get manifested as another form. And finally, Ati Deva. Deva means here, it is that intelligent phenomenal forces, which is again coming from Bhagavan. So the Adhisthana of Brahman is Bhagavan. The Adhisthana of Atma is Bhagavan. The Adhisthana of Ishvara, the karma is Bhagavan. The Adhisthana of Adibhuta, which is the elements, is Bhagavan. And the Adhisthana of Atideva. Atideva, I already explained what it is. The Atideva, Shankaracharya explains that as Hiranyagarbha. Just like an individual is in control of the body, there is a macro level controllers of the whole system, the phenomenal forces that controls the nature, the law of the natures, and that is known as Atideva. And this Atideva, the Adhisthana, or the center, or that which holds this Atideva, is also the Ishvara, the Brahman. So these are the first 4 topics, or 5 topics, in fact. So we'll stop here today. We covered the first 4 verses of the 8th chapter. Let me summarize that in 3 sentences and open up for any questions. So the first thing we talked was this 8th chapter is part of the 2nd Shatka, and Upasana is the key topic of this chapter. Upasana, the purpose of the Upasana is to gain a stable mind, and we uses the Upasana of Om in this chapter, and that is why it is known as the Taraka Brahma Yoga or Akshara Brahma Yoga. This chapter covers 5 topics. The first topic is the definition of a few key terminologies which is used in the previous chapter. Second is mainly the importance of keeping a stable mind at the time of death, and the benefit of getting united with Bhagavan or thinking about Bhagavan at the time of death. So that is from 5 to 14. And then we talk about the 2 goals of life. One is the material goal, the other one is spiritual goal. And the 2 types of path, one is Krishna Gati, the dark path, and the Shukla Gati, white path. And finally, the glory of the Upasana. These are the different topics of this chapter. And the first 2 verses are questions from Arjuna. He has 7 questions. What is Brahma? What is Atma? What is Karma? What is Atideva? What is Adibhuta? What is Atiyajna? And finally, how can I keep my mind stable and connect with you at the time of death? That is 7. So we heard answers for the first 4 questions. Brahman is that which does not have any change. Absolutely no change. That is what is Brahman. And the manifestation of that Brahman in an individual is the Atma. The karma means anything that done by an individual is karma. And this karma is the cause of the birth and rebirth of all the individuals. So that is karma. And who is the giver of karma? It is again the Ishvara. And then Atibhuta is the elements of the universe. And again, these elements of the universe comes from Ishvara. And finally, Atideva, it is the phenomenal forces of the universe, that is also Ishvara. This is what we saw. Any questions?
Rajesh, I had a question about karma.
Yeah.
The karma which is being referred to here, is it specific only to our voluntary karma, or also does it include the involuntary actions?
It's a whole means, of course, it's a good question, right? So all the actions are karma, but to be very specific, only voluntary action will contribute to the rebirth. So your heart pumping, it is involuntary action that is not going to cause a rebirth or a taking of a particular punya or papa. Only the punya papa comes with the voluntary action, conscious action. That's it. So the scope of karma includes everything. Anything you do with a karana is karma. Good question. Anything else? Please read these verses, first 4 verses. I will post the notes tomorrow, and going forward, I will post the notes exactly on the same day. Let's try to understand this chapter very well. So this is
one more question, Rajeshji.
Please.
So, given the definition that you just explained of Adi Daiva and Adi Bhutam, isn't the jiva a combination of both?
Absolutely.
Like the body is perishable.
Yeah, absolutely. So Adhyatma is the consciousness, but Adibhuta is the elements that constitute the body. So if you take an individual person, Rajesh or Arnab or anybody, his body is Adibhuta, whereas the reality or the Atma is Adhyatma. And whatever he does is karma. And actually he is bound by the rules and regulations imposed by the Adhideva. So that is the connection. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. So if you cannot attend the class, like this is already available in YouTube, Project Self YouTube channel. We are going live in Project Self YouTube channel also. So the next set of classes are actually, we have Thursday, we will continue the Atma Bodha. We are entering into the topic called Nididhyasana, which is the Vedantic meditation, which is extremely powerful. So in the next 10 classes, we will cover Atma Bodha and we will go to Isha Upanishad. So these are Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. That also will be available in YouTube. And finally, Sunday, we will continue the Karma Yoga. So we'll start from verse 1. We covered 4 verses, but we will restart. We will cover and understand the Karma Yoga in detail. And February 1st, we are starting Patanjali Yoga Sutra, one of the most popular texts in our culture. So that will be Sundays morning. We are fine-tuning the timing to make sure that people can attend the yoga class also. So that is another class. These are the key classes that is going on. And we started Suprabhat Yoga, everyday yoga classes, morning 7 a.m. to 7:40. It is an excellent way to start the yoga. It's a 365-day program. It is going to inculcate this yoga practices into our life on a daily basis. So I know that a few people attending that class, that is very useful, because over a period of time, means it is an instructor-led class. Over a period of time, it becomes your habit if you're committed to that. So that is the benefit. Anybody has any questions on the classes? I think a few people are attending already that class also. So that is good. So anybody wants to join, you can join in this 1 or 2 weeks, because otherwise it will be too far. We wanted 365 days. It will complete with a retreat in next January. Any other questions? And of course, we have the Sundays program, predominantly focusing on pranayama and meditation. Gina conducts that. That's also a very useful program. Any questions, comments, or anything you want to say? Excellent. We have a few guest speakers lined up. March, we have Swami Sarvapriyananda. He will come. We will take a Gita theme and discuss with him. That's just another announcement. Okay, so thank you very much. Glad to start these classes again. I will see you on Thursday.
Thanks, Rajesh. Thank you.